Seems like it's green all the way. Record territory is what we're perhaps fiddling with, particularly out in Asia. So it was a good start to the trading picture, certainly earlier on this morning. Let's open things up then and see exactly what did happen. A more than 1% gain for the Shanghai Composite out in China as well today, with the Nikkei following suit. And in fact, outperforming it, going 2.12% higher by close of trade today. So a very positive closing picture there. That really has filtered through from the closing picture out of positivity from last week that we saw out of the United States. So that's brought in a tinge of green as well to the European market picture. 0.9% higher as the FTSE 100 out in London in this lunchtime trading picture. As you can see, the others following suit as well. Green across the board. So it certainly is not a bad day at all. Even on the local front, we're seeing some positivity. As you can tell, more than 1% higher is the JSE All Share today, back above 65,000 points. We are just above that mark at present. In terms of negative counters, though, we do have a few, and unfortunately, the financials have taken a bit of a hit today, 1.5% weaker, and that is pushed down by banks, which have lost more than 2% as well today. But, of course, talk is all about the green, and that comes from the likes of resources, which are 3.6% to the good today. So some positive trading coming through from the gold miners as well as the platinum mining shares. Platinum mining shares going up 1.3%, a big gain of more than 4% as well for gold miners. Industrials enjoying a sense of positivity of late, 0.2% higher though. Not the biggest gainer, but still certainly helping the counters move along. The big gainer today in terms of stocks is Telkom, coming out with a trading statement today. So it seems that things aren't necessarily looking too shabby. Investors perhaps willing to get a little bit more entrenched in this stock. Is 50 Rand perhaps the next level to kind of hit at? It's at 40 Rand and 62 cents right now. Sign-off also going up, but big questions around them. Only 2 Rand and 8 cents a share at present. Is there some investment value in that maybe? We'll discuss that in a moment or two. Going down though, as we noted earlier, the banks have been suffering. So too has Nedbank, going down nearly 5%. A similar move for Old Mutual, also in the financials sector, getting hit 4.7% as well today. Rhodes Foods getting a bit of a hit, 3.3% weaker. In terms of currencies, we're weaker unfortunately as well today, but we're still below 15 Rand against the US dollar. So perhaps there's some sort of joy in that. 14.95 then against the greenback, below 18 Rand against the euro, 17.99 to be exact, 20 Rand 48 cents for a British pound. And into the commodities, more green out on that front too. The oil price has gone up beyond $60 a barrel, beyond its highest mark in more than a year now, and certainly enjoying itself as it goes up 1.42% in this afternoon trading picture. Platinum also 2.5% gained, so some good demand coming through for the platinum metal there as well. All right, let's unpack this market picture a little bit more then. Gary Boyson from Rand Swiss joins us as well right here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Gary, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. It's just green everywhere. Where's that coming from?
Yeah, the market's optimistic. We're getting, I suppose, positive news internationally around the vaccine, and that's helping everyone to feel more optimistic and go out and buy shares. And I suppose we've got interest rates being low for a long time in future, so a lot of money is being forced into equity markets. We had obviously the UK coming out and say they might be taking interest rates negative. So if you can't put your cash in the bank, where do you have to put it? Into the market.
Why don't we go negative though? I mean, at least not, even if it's not negative, right? We're still sitting at 3.5% for our repo rate, and I get the sense that it helps with investment or whatever the case is, but have we offered sufficient stimulus in the sense that our market can feel it, and so too can our economics?
Sure. You say that to the horror of anyone that needs to have a fixed income investment.
Of course, yes.
Every retiree is cringing at what you've just said. But yes, we do have real interest rates in South Africa, and our yield is very attractive. And I think the concern is that if we drop our interest rates too low, that carry trade that plays out, so the idea that people come and invest in South African bonds for the yield and into South African interest-bearing products for the yield will evaporate, and that will really weaken our currency aggressively. We've already got the most volatile currency. So I think that's possibly why the Reserve Bank would be erring on the side of caution. But at the same time, many of our problems are structural and won't be solved by higher investment markets. It might be great for our pension fund industry that's largely invested in the JSE, but it's not going to solve the structural skews in the South African economy. That really has to come from fiscal policy.
Okay, let's turn our attention then a little bit locally. Look, some company results out in the United States that we're also seeing out this week. The likes of Kisco, I suppose, are meant to come out as well this week. But locally, if we still keep tech-like, Telkom coming out with a trading update there, and they're seeing strong mobile subscriber growth as well, publishing a good set of 9-month earnings as well to December 2020. And I mean, they just recently passed Cell C to be the third biggest mobile network in South Africa. Seems like things are looking a little bit up.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, if you look at what Sipho Maseko has done with the company since he joined in 2013, it's been absolutely amazing. And his focus really has been on mobile. He's the former chief operating officer of Vodacom. Yeah. So this really was the strategy for Telkom. What used to be called ATA, now Telkom Mobile. Yeah. And that subscriber number jump, 14.7 up from, I think it was 14.9 at least, up from 13.7. It's a decent appreciation. The market was expecting a lot out of this trading statement already. So if you look at the forward PE, Telkom was trading on about a 6 forward, but a historic of 22, which means that basically there was a lot baked into this trading statement. A lot of people were hoping for very good numbers, but we got them. And as you can see from the board here, it's up over 10% today.
So is 40 Rand perhaps just the tip of the iceberg here? They can really go a little bit higher, particularly this year if they continue to invest in their entity a little bit more. And I suppose also depending what happens with the spectrum allocation a little bit later on and around March.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on inside Telkom. So Telkom is obviously the consumer business, which is the direct. It's the fixed data, at least the fixed data and fixed voice. Yeah. And you've obviously got the mobile subs as well. But remember, there's also BCX in there. So BCX makes up about 38% of its revenue, and that's obviously under a little bit of pressure with the coronavirus, just shutting down businesses. They found it a little bit more tough. But they've also got their gyro business, which is their masts and towers, which in this trading update they came out and said they could potentially they've done a market sounding exercise which has been concluded successfully. So we expect that probably to be spun off and some value unlocked from shareholders. Looking at the institutional movements, there's a lot of institutional coverage on the share. We've seen the likes of T. Rowe Price buying into it. They've become the fourth biggest shareholder. Obviously the government owns 40%, so they've got that big anchor shareholder as well. But we're seeing some of the international players starting to favour the stock, and I think the median target price is around 46, 47 Rand a share. So it does seem like there's more upside to come. But even pre-today's move, it was already up almost 20% for the year. So it's having an absolute flyer in 2021.
How far can it go?
Oh,
how far can anything go?
How far can anything go? I mean, and this is, you just have to go and ask Elon Musk at Tesla.
I won't ask him. He'll just become the richest man in the world again, right?
Stocks can go a long way past where their fundamental valuations are, but you still get the sense that Telkom is not particularly expensive at current levels. As I said, it may be trading on a forward of 22, but at least it's a forward of 6, but a historic of 22. I mean, this is actually, once the earnings come through, and if they do, and this trading statement gives us a lot of confidence they will at full year. This is going to be probably cheaper than MTN and Vodacom. So it's a very cheap company when you look at the earnings growth that it's getting.
Just very finally though, MTN is actually selling their tower businesses across many parts of the world, and I suppose they're doing that because they're trying to shore up enough cash in order to get to the spectrum allocation and that auction when it happens, with a whole lot of cash flush as well. Should Telkom be looking at doing the same, perhaps selling their gyro business? I mean, they aren't necessarily big on cash at present either.
Sure. So I think that's the idea. And I mean, the way that mobile telephony operates at the moment, the mast and tower businesses are very separate from what the actual mobile operators are. So in the US, it's the biggest property REIT listed in the United States is something called American Tower Corp, which essentially owns all these little parcels of land, and they maintain the towers. But then they'll have a single tower with many different network operators operating on a single tower. It's a more efficient way of rolling out the infrastructure of a business, and I mean that in itself is a wonderful business, but probably better done as a separate listed entity that can be structured as a REIT, and that specific investors can go and get into that style of tower business. So I think Telkom unbundling gyro, probably right. MTN selling off. I think they actually did sell those towers to American Tower Corp. So I think it probably is the right strategy, and focus on what you're good at as a mobile network operator, which is your customers, and delivering a fantastic
that they get
brand.
as much as possible out of you. Number 2 there in terms of stocks that have gone up is Steinhoff, and very interestingly enough, the stock just keeps on climbing a little bit, and it seems to be going up and up. And I'm not saying that there's a form of Reddit or GameStop here in any way, but could it possibly be that way where people are like, well, this was priced to go completely down, I think let's spike it up?
It's quite possible. So a lot of market commentators have been discussing it. I think Jean-Pierre Verster was saying it, Chantal Marx has said it as well, saying that if you look at the short interest, which is basically the number of people that have short positions in the company, it does look like a prime candidate for Wall Street bets, Reddit-style pump and dump, as we saw with GameStop. So there has been moves, but there's also has been fundamental news flow underneath the company. It is actively chatted about on these forum boards as well. So it's not as far-fetched as you might think that this could be the next GameStop.
But could we have a similar sort of situation as GameStop and Reddit in South Africa? I mean,
of course, yeah. So whenever you look at a short squeeze, if there's a lot of people short on a stock, so the short interest is very high, and you manage to, and the hedge fund or the traders that have those short positions don't have deep pockets and can't manage their margin calls, and a group of retail investors comes and buys up the stock a couple of 100%, absolutely they're going to get squeezed. The institutions are going to call for their margin deposits. They're not going to have the money, and they're going to be forced to buy back their stock. That will send the stock higher.
Boy.
The problem is, though, that if you look at what happened with GameStop and the likes of BlackBerry, their short interest was far larger than something like Steinhoff. So it's going to be a lot more difficult to. And I get the sense that our hedge funds are probably more well capitalized as well. So I think it'll be far more difficult for retail investors to get it right. But short squeezes in our market happen all the time. It's not unheard of. Maybe 1,000% gain in 5 days won't happen, but definitely we do see it as one of the mechanics that drive markets.
R2 a share, 1,000% will only get it to like 10 Rand or something, right? Very quickly, we don't have too much time, but Brent crude now above $60 a barrel. That could go even further. I mean, not so long ago, we're thinking that 40, 45 was just the average.
No, absolutely. And there's, a lot going on, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but essentially we've got a big drawdown on oil inventories. So that's really showing that there's more demand in the oil market than was previously thought. This is also, I think, just optimism around a vaccine rollout. But we've got very, very curtailed supply. Saudi Arabia is taking out 1 million barrels per day all the way until April. We've got Russia behaving itself for a change as a member of OPEC+. It only in January allowed its production to increase by 120,000 barrels per day. They were allowed 125, so 125,000 that is. So it looks like we're going to have a fairly constrained supply, and I suppose we've got Biden in the US as well. So that's very green-friendly administration, and maybe those shale producers are not going to be able to react as quickly. And I think the market concerned about the regulations he might bring in about US oil production. So all in all, that's shifting some more power towards OPEC, and what we're resulting with is a much, much higher oil price.
Oh, let's see how far it goes. That doesn't help our local currency. We just hope our local oil price and petrol price, that is actually at present. So we'll see how things go. Gary, thank you so much for chatting to us. Really appreciate it there. Gary Boyson is from Rand Swiss, then joining us to help unpack that market picture. As you saw, a whole lot of green.